On today's episode of Where's Brian, we're working with a division that helps everyone get where they're going. In dozens of locations throughout town, their equipment operates 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. Do you know where I am today?
I'm Brian Phillips. On most days, I work in an office for the Ames City Manager. Since starting here, I've learned a lot about the different jobs city employees have. Many of them you might see every day. Others work behind the scenes to provide quality programs and exceptional service to the community. And that's why I'm here, to experience the different jobs the City of Ames has to offer. You never know where I'll go next.
Part of the Public Works Department, the Transportation Division serves the community by providing facilities which enhance the movement of people within the city. This system provides for the orderly flow of vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians through all parts of the community. Today, we'll be working with some new twists on an old idea: traffic signals. Morning, Damien.
Morning, Brian.
So before we get started today, why don't you tell us a little bit about traffic in the Public Works Department?
All right, well, traffic oversees all the maintenance and operations of traffic signals, signs, and pavement markings throughout Ames. So really what that means is anything that we have as far as replacement or upkeep of all those facilities, that's what traffic does.
Okay. And I've heard that we've got some new types of traffic signals around town. What can you tell us about those?
Well, a couple of new technologies that we have at our traffic signals is the flashing yellow arrow. And the flashing yellow arrow really is a signal indication that replaces the green ball. Okay. So before, when you'd have a green ball and you'd have a left turn lane, you'd have to yield to oncoming traffic. Now that indication is replaced with the flashing yellow arrow. So it's a pretty simple change. It's a change that came about in the new 2009 manual on uniform traffic control devices, which is what we use as our standard for traffic control devices.
And this is something that people might see all across the country then as well, too, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And what about pedestrian control? So here we have some new types of those as well.
Right. Well, with the other new regulations that we have pertain to visually impaired for ADA. So in order to meet that requirement, we have push buttons that are audible and vibrotactile, which means that they vibrate when they push, and then they also speak a message for people who are visually impaired or if they have reduced sight.
And what are a couple of the locations that people might be able to see these new traffic control devices?
Well, we have 4 new installations as of this summer. So 28th and Grand, South 16th and South Dayton, and then we have 2 in Campus Town, so Lincoln Way and Sheldon and Lincoln Way and Ash. Those intersections have all these new features.
As well as where we're going today, the intersection at Dotson and Mortensen, correct?
Right. That one is a new installation that the school district is actually installing as part of the new middle school.
Great. So what are we going to be doing today?
Well, we're going to be going and we're going to be changing out a yellow indication.
Okay.
And I think what we're going to do is just see how that's done and give you kind of the run through of what we do on a daily basis.
Okay, and what am I going to need before I get out there?
Well, anytime you're doing work in the right-of-way, you need to wear a Type 2 vest, which is a yellow safety vest with a certain amount of reflective material on it. All of our workers, you'll see any city worker that's out in the right-of-way doing their job is going to have that vest on.
Okay. Well, I'm ready to go get changed and get started if I'll follow you.
Perfect, let's go.
Okay. Morning, Brad.
Morning, Brian.
So we're up in the air here at Dotson Drive and Mortensen Road. So this is kind of like your office, isn't it?
That's right, Brian. Part of the year I spend my time up here doing maintenance on our traffic signals. The City of Ames has approximately 70 full functioning traffic signals. On top of that, we also maintain a handful of mid-block school crossing signals and school flashers. So this is where I spend some of my time during the days.
Okay. And we should probably note, since we're up here in the air, what kind of safety precautions have we taken today?
Safety equipment that's required when we're up in the air are these safety harnesses, and as you can see, they're tied off to the boom. Also, anytime we're working out in the roadway or right away, we're required to wear these Class 2 safety vests. And also, once we start working on the live electricity here in a minute, we wear our safety gloves.
Okay. So it sounds like we're going to be changing out a traffic signal today. How frequently do you have to do this?
Changes are less frequent than they used to be when we used light bulbs. Now we're using LED signals and they have a lot longer lifespan. So probably once every couple weeks we'll have to go out and change out an LED that's failed.
And I mean, that probably makes a big difference, because I think for this intersection, you know, counting up all the bulbs, there's a lot of lights on a single intersection.
That's right. There's a lot of lights, and like we've talked about, these LEDs use a lot less power, so we're really saving the city some energy there too.
That's great. Okay, so what's the procedure here?
Well, like I mentioned,
today?
the first step would be to put on your safety gloves.
Okay. And which of the lights are we going to change out?
We're going to change out the yellow light.
Okay. So what's next?
And then what you need to do is loosen these 2 screws to open the enclosure.
So, Brad, how do you know, there's so many traffic signals in town, how do you know when one of them is burned out?
Okay, well, there's certain signals that burn out. If there's not a duplicate of that signal on the signal pole, it'll just be a dark spot. So what will happen is a lot of times motorists will call into the Public Works office, and that number is 239-5550 to report that a light's out, and then we'll respond as soon as we know about it to replace that light. Other signals, as I mentioned, if there's only one green arrow, what will happen is that will create a conflict in the signal cabinet, and that signal will go to flash, and the police department will call us and we'll respond immediately to get that back up and running.
So they'll know pretty quick, because traffic will start to slow down.
Exactly,
at that intersection.
and they'll get reports and they'll call us out to get the problem fixed. So.
Okay, great. All right, so what's next in this?
Okay, so now that we have that open, we need to take a screwdriver here and pry up on the bracket down there that holds the head in place. Making sure you hold on to the head, because we don't want to drop it on any cars below.
Right here?
Yep. So we pry down on it a little bit too, maybe.
Does this just come
up? It
up?
just comes straight up, yeah.
Okay.
Just like that.
Okay. Hey, I saved our little piece here too.
So I'll hold this.
Okay.
Now, if you would like to disconnect the wires in there, all you have to do is pull them down off their terminals.
So we got one here, and looks like one here.
Yep. Okay, so this old one has been disconnected. So now I'm going to hand you the new assembly to reinstall. So that one's going to go in like this, and we need to make sure that pin is slid up. So what you're going to do is slide the top pin up in its hole. And then try to line the bottom one up and push it down. Yep.
Okay.
And then make sure it's firmly connected. There you go.
Okay.
And now we just have to reconnect the wires.
So it's interesting, as we're working on this just a little bit, the pole is really bouncing up and down. Does that get difficult in the wind?
Yeah, it's kind of, especially if you have to try to line a screwdriver up or something there, it's kind of hard to hit the slot.
Okay. So these go, one was...
Yep, the neutral goes back on the neutral there.
Up here?
Yep. Perfect. And now all we need to do is bunch those wires up and shut the door.
And then wait for some cars, right?
Yep.
So does the being up here and the height bother you at all? Or?
It used to when I first started. I never was a big fan of heights, but over time you kind of get used to it. And
What's the most difficult part about having to do this type of work?
The most difficult part is, like you mentioned, dealing with the weather, the wind and cold and snow and rain and even heat. So,
well, and it sounds like there's a lot of things you have to keep in mind too with being out in traffic and also being up in the air. It makes it more complicated.
That's right, Brian. We always do a good job to set up a temporary work zone. What that involves is setting up a truck that has an arrow board which can show the traffic which way you want them to go of the truck, and we always make sure we have plenty of cones out to just give traffic a heads up that we're out there and make them conscious of the fact that we're in the area. And
that's great. That's really helpful. So when the light's being worked on, obviously you got a lot of traffic going through. What can motorists do to help you guys out?
Well, Brian, sometimes when the lights, if there's a component with the lights that fails, the signal will go into four-way flash. So it's important to remember that when the signal is in four-way flash, you treat it as a four-way stop sign.
Okay.
So that's one important thing to remember. And also there's times if on rare occurrences we'll lose power to the signal and the signal will be dark. So it's also good to remember if a signal's dark to treat it as a stop sign also. So everybody comes to a stop and then take turns going through the intersection. Also in rare occurrences, if we have a bad snowstorm or something, you might see the lenses covered with snow and not be able to make out what light is on.
Sure.
So that's also a good time to come to a stop and then take turns going through the intersection.
And certainly slow down and take your time, right?
That's right, exactly.
Okay. All right, so now our signal's in. Let's see if we can get it to turn yellow, huh?
That's right. Every time we put a new signal in, we always make sure it functions while we're up in the air. So with no side street traffic, that's probably never going to happen.
Hey, there it goes. So it looks like this one's working then.
It works great.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that we need to do up here, or can we head back down to solid ground?
We can head back down, Brian.
Okay. Okay, Brad, now that we're back down on the ground, you also maintain the pedestrian signals, right?
That's right, Brian. We maintain all of the pedestrian push buttons at the intersections, and those are also a very important part of the signal, obviously, so that pedestrians are given a way to safely cross the street at the intersections.
And with our new intersections, we have a little bit different style of pedestrian crossing, correct?
So these new push buttons have a lot of features, including audible. When you push the button, you'll hear a walk message. And they also vibrate to let people know that the walk light's on.
So if somebody's visually impaired, they'll know as well that it's time for them to cross.
Our goal is to make our crossings as safe as possible for everybody. So with various type of impairments, these provide the function for them to safely cross the street. So you'll notice the audible message. You'll also notice the visible countdown over there. And then if you hold your hand over the button here, you'll feel it vibrate when the walk light comes on. So the first message you'll get is the wait message when you press the button. If you hold the button for an extended amount of time, I'll let you hold that, Brian.
Wait. You are crossing Dotson Drive at Mortensen Road.
So it tells you where you're crossing.
That's right. It tells you what intersection you're crossing. And then once the walk light comes on, it'll bring up the message and tell you the walk light is on to cross whatever street you're crossing. And then you'll hear an audible countdown. Another thing is you hear this thing's constantly beeping all the time. What that's called is a locate tone.
Okay.
So people with visual impairments can tell where the button is just by hearing that locate tone.
Oh, I see. So it kind of shows them where to go in order to safely cross.
That's right. And you'll notice the buttons are separated by a certain distance so that they can tell which approach they're crossing on.
So there's a lot of new features to this
this style of pedestrian crossing then.
That's right.
That's pretty neat.
Another feature that will happen when an emergency vehicle goes through the intersection, you'll hear a tone that says emergency vehicle is approaching, warning you to clear the intersection.
Okay, so you have a little bit of a warning, again, if you're visually impaired and need to clear the intersection.
That's right.
Oh, that's fantastic. So there are also a couple of other improvements to the intersections around town. What can you tell us about how the intersections know that a vehicle is there?
Okay, for years we used what we called inductive loops. Those were the diamonds that were cut in the pavement. Those would sense a car over it just by a change of inductance. And that would put a call in saying, hey, I'm here, you know, turn the light green for me. What we started using now is radar detectors. You'll notice that oval shaped up there on the mast arm. That is a radar sensor, and we program those so we can actually draw zones in out in the lanes. And then whenever a car hits those zones, it'll say, you know, I'm here, I need a green light. So that's what we use those for.
So were there issues with the inductive loops? Is that why we're going to this technology?
There wasn't necessarily issues. They were really reliable. The problem is anytime you pour a new street, new concrete, we hate to go in and cut it up because it just creates break points for the new concrete. So that's part of the reason we went to this new radar detection. And also the radar detection does a lot better job sensing bicycles and motorcycles. So
that's probably pretty helpful.
That's right.
Okay, great. Well, we learned a lot about intersections today and how to maintain them. I really appreciate you taking your time to show us this, Brad.
My pleasure.
Thanks, we'll see you around.
You betcha.
Well, hopefully you now have an idea of how new lights and signals are helping improve safety throughout the community. If you have questions about traffic signals, feel free to call the Public Works Department at 515-239-5160. Well, that's all for today's show, but be sure to tune in to the next Where's Brian, because you'll never know where I'll go next.